without any hearing for doing an interview with a 17-year-old about informed consent. And I feel super bad because it was my idea that it would be great to have a doctor talking to a 17-year-old about what informed consent meant and what sort of questions a 17-year-old might want to ask. But of course, they can't afford to have people speaking about these things because it's like a bubble. And the minute you pop the bubble, it's gone and there's nothing left. So instead, they've invented this whole misinformation, disinformation thing because they can't defend themselves with law or reason or evidence or common sense or anything else. So this is why it's got as bad as it's got. As Anne said, I'm facing the Law Society charges for challenging government policy. Now, when I studied law, that was one of the reasons I studied law, because I wanted to stand up for people and I wanted to challenge things that were wrong, that were unfair. I go to court, and for example, with the first vax challenge that we did back in May 2021, we went to court, we challenged the government's approval of the Pfizer vaccine and its rollout to everybody in New Zealand over 16. And we challenged it because the government regulator, MedSafe, had decided that the risks exceeded the benefits. And the government regulator had refused to give full consent because they weren't satisfied that it was safe. And so instead, under pressure from the government, they gave it provisional consent with 58 conditions, outstanding conditions about its safety, its effectiveness, the product integrity, and all sorts of other things. 58 outstanding conditions because they hadn't finished the clinical safety trials. And with provisional consent at that time, you could only use a medicine with provisional consent for the restricted treatment of a limited number of patients. So we went to court saying everybody in New Zealand over 16 isn't a limited number of patients. How can you roll it out to a whole lot of healthy people when you don't know if it's safe, you don't know if it's effective, you don't know if it stops infection, you don't know if it stops transition, you don't know if it stops hospitalisation, you don't know if it stops death, you don't know if it stops people getting reinfected. And the court agreed that it was unlawful. And just when I was on Facebook, when I got the decision, I was announcing it, the government came through and announced that they would be creating an emergency law change to make a technical change that removed the words for the restricted treatment of a limited number of patients. So all of a sudden, a medicine that wasn't safe or effective with 58 outstanding conditions could be rolled out to everybody in New Zealand over 16. So that is what a farce this whole thing has been. I mean, I'm quite angry about it, to be honest. I've been trying to be really calm about it, but the more I see the harm that's done and the more I meet people as I travel around New Zealand with Freedoms New Zealand, meeting people whose family members have died after the vaccine, people sitting in wheelchairs who were fit and healthy people, and suddenly they've got myocarditis or pericarditis or all sorts of other conditions. They can't walk anymore. They have no future. People working in really senior positions who had a stroke a few days after a vaccine or whose family members died. So they now admit, eventually, myocarditis. They admitted it when Rory Nairn died because of his brave family speaking out. So that was in November 2021. Now, Rory Nairn got vaccinated because he was under so much pressure because of the traffic light system that he couldn't go to his own wedding if he wasn't vaccinated. And his poor fiancée just felt absolutely awful about it because she'd encouraged him, come on, it's safe and effective, get it done. I mean, it's absolute tragedy what happened. And just all credit to his family, who they've just spoken out and said, this can't happen to anybody else. But did you know, way back in July 2021, several months before Rory died, an Auckland woman died from myocarditis post-vaccine. And they kept that as quiet as they could. And I only recently got it under the Official Information Act after waiting 7 months from the Ministry of Justice, a report that was published in August 2021, so a month after she died, written up by the director of the CALM Register and the pathologist at Auckland Hospital and all sorts of other New Zealand and international experts about this woman who died, and stamped on the bottom was, "Do not release under the Official Information Act." So they were actively withholding information from the people of New Zealand to prop up their lies. And it just goes on and on. There's so much wrong with the system. And what they do, they cannot defend what they do, so they pick on doctors like Anne and the other New Zealand doctors who have been brave enough to speak out to try and intimidate other doctors not to speak out. So people all around New Zealand say, well, it must be okay, or my doctor would tell me. No, the doctors are banished from saying a word. If they say a word, they will be suspended. That's how it works. And then they do another thing. What they did is they brought in the vaccinators. So the vaccinators aren't doctors or nurses or anything else. One of the Maori Party MPs, who was a hairdresser, did the 4-hour online vaccinator course, and she went out vaccinating people. So the vaccinators aren't bound by any of the medical ethics, any of the medical training. They have no access to any of the registers of people's allergies or anything else. All they do is they wheel people through. They don't go through any kind of informed consent process, apart from check the form if you've got these things, oh, well, you can have the jab anyway. There's just no protection whatsoever. And again, they've just intimidated people into not daring to speak out by calling people names, by calling people, anti-vax, conspiracy theorists. So we have a big problem in New Zealand, and we're actually still a long way behind the rest of the world. I went over to Europe last year to visit my kids and to go to some of the freedom and medical meetings. And they are so far ahead of us. I mean, I got into Edinburgh, I think it was in July last year, when we were still, you can't go out without a mask and all this stuff. Nobody was wearing masks anywhere. It was the start of the jazz festival. There were thousands of people all out in the streets and celebrating, drinking, eating together, dancing together. I didn't see anybody dropping dead in the streets. Not a hint of it. It was just, again, a facade that they've been stringing us as long as they can possibly string us along. So, the good thing is, I think enough of us have got it now. We have to. We have to be brave. I call it the sort of golf club syndrome in New Zealand, that nobody wants to embarrass themselves at the golf club by asking a question that might be a little bit embarrassing. But somehow we've got to break through this, right? Our lives are at stake. Our kids' lives, our whole future is at stake. We have to get brave. The more we step forward, the more they step back. If we step back, they keep coming at us. The only way to stop them is to get brave, form groups, form alliances, do whatever it takes to make ourselves big and strong and brave. And if we're not brave, we just have to pretend to be brave. Okay, it doesn't matter. Whatever it takes. With the Outdoors and Freedom Party, so I'm the co-leader of the Outdoors and Freedom Party, and just my background for those that don't know, I studied science. I've got a biochemistry and microbiology double major degree, and then I studied health protection. I worked for the government. So I worked as a contact tracer, investigating infectious diseases. And when the COVID thing happened, I was like, hang on a minute, why are they telling everybody to do the opposite of what we were taught? So it was this big red flag. And then the more I looked into it, the more red flags there were. So it wasn't just some random person that just sort of woke up one day and said, oh, I don't like this. I actually researched and asked people and talked to doctors and talked to scientists and talked to experts all around the world because it didn't feel right. Paul talked about, the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is supposed to be up here. It's one of the few laws we have for the people to control the government. Right? Most of the laws we have are for the government to control the people. One of the few laws we have for the people to control the government, at the first opportunity, they just all ignored it completely. And this is why we need a massive change. And this is why I'm got into politics, because I can do so much as a lawyer, but there's a whole lot of stuff I can't do when they keep passing these laws in Wellington and mandates day after day. I mean, I'm a lawyer specialising in the area. I couldn't even keep up with what the latest law was. I helped loads of people who were arrested by the police, and the police were arresting them for the wrong law because the law had changed so fast the police didn't know what the law was. I mean, it's just crazy stuff. Crazy, crazy stuff. And at the moment, we're in a bit of a kind of a lull between the tsunami wave, and it's kind of gone out a little bit at the moment because guess what? Election's coming and they're sucking up to us. But rest assured, the tsunami will come back again. They're trying to close us down with hate speech, right? Hate speech, stuff the government doesn't like. They don't want us talking about anything they don't like. Tyranny? What is it? I've got this Law Society complaint against me, so I've been waiting 1.5 years. Actually, this is actually my application to strike out their complaint on the grounds that they've misunderstood the law, but it's going to be an interesting process. Just in terms of future, because I do like to always believe that there's a bright side of all of this mad stuff that's been happening, right? And one bright side is when everything's changing, sort of like juggling, right? All the balls are up in the air. We do have actually a lot more chance to make them land where we want them to land. Like there's masses of problems. The health is a disaster, education, it's all a disaster. It's almost like they deliberately made it a disaster, isn't it? But anyway, what we can do with health, we believe, we all know food is our medicine. Healthy environment, healthy connections, all of the simple things. Like, yes, of course you need hospitals for emergencies, for sudden crisis, but all of the chronic issues, the autoimmune disorders, so many of those things, we have solutions with nutrition and with all of the other supplements, the things they're trying to take away, of course, with the therapeutic products bill. But we do have solutions, and they don't all have to be done through the hospital system. So we actually can take a lot more control over our own health and well-being by good education and connecting with the right people. So the Outdoors and Freedom Party, and also the Outdoors and Freedom Party, but we're also part of Freedoms New Zealand, our policy is to let people take more control of their health and get it out of that centralised, nationalised, globalist control and bring everything back local. Local people making local decisions for themselves. People, individuals making health decisions for themselves. Gosh, just what the Bill of Rights says. How could that be? Really simple stuff, right? So there's loads and loads of things that we can do. So what we've got to do is also take control of our speech again, our opinions, and that's partly through the law, and it's partly through working together and reclaiming it with our courage and getting brave and being unified, supporting each other, agreeing that it's okay to agree on things and it's okay to disagree, but let's at least talk about them. So there's loads of things we can do, and the election is just one of those things that gives us a massive opportunity. It's not going to fix everything, like the system is a mess, but if we have some voices inside Parliament in Wellington, we have so much more access to information. Instead of me doing Official Information Act requests at sort of 3 o'clock in the morning and waiting, it's supposed to be 20 working days, but sometimes it's like 6 months before I get an answer. If you're an MP, they have to answer. If you do an oral question, they have to answer that day. And you only get a few oral questions, but at least that's some. And if you do a written question, they have to answer in 5 working days, so a week. So your turnaround is way better. There's so much more you can do just with that. And that's why we're so strong on unity. There's all of these new little fragmented parties starting. It's a disaster. It doesn't matter if you don't like me, or it doesn't matter if you don't like Brian. It doesn't matter if you don't like someone. If there's someone that you do like, you need to get behind the team. Get your person in. Because at the moment we've got 120 elected representatives who are actively conspired against us not to represent us, and the lot that were there before them, they were just as bad. They were there during COVID, and where were they? They were signing the cabinet advice papers saying, oh, we'll rely on the vaccine as our solution. That's what Winston was doing. If anybody's thinking that Winston might be an answer, trust me, He's not. And so let's pitch where we can make a difference, and let's work together, and let's network with everybody we can. We can use the 2 or 3 degrees, whatever, of separation to our advantage in this case. They can close us down on mainstream media, they can close us down this way and that way, but what they can't do is stop us talking to each other and raising awareness. You guys out with your signs on the street, all of those things, amazing. So I've always talk way too long, I'm really sorry. I'll shut up, but you can ask questions afterwards. And thank you all. It's so great to see such a great crowd here.